Welcome to Unstoppable Stories That Move. I'm your host, Sally Hed Dahlquist. I've traveled all over the world to run marathons and am fascinated by the ordinary people who do extraordinary things. They just won't quit. No matter what life throws at them, they keep going. Mile after mile, challenge after challenge, they find a way to push beyond their limits. So listen as these seemingly normal people share their stories of resilience from the race course and beyond, and inspire us to keep moving forward too. Let's get to it. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Hed Dahlquist, zooming in from Afton, Minnesota. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm here today with the unstoppable, the legendary, Garry Bjorklund. Now, if you're a runner, Gary's name may seem familiar to you because his name is printed on thousands of T-shirts. Since 1991, Grandma's Marathon started a half marathon and named it in honor of Garry Bjorklund. Wow, that's quite amazing. Garry is a Minnesota hometown hero, the winner of Grandma's Marathon. He's a collegiate All-American. He's an Olympian. Along the way, Gary's had many obstacles, the least of which was a foot injury in 1972 when he was about 21, where he needed surgery and they told him he may never run again. And of course, his biggest problem was part of a political pawn when the 1980s Olympics was boycotted by President Carter to protest Russia invading Afghanistan. Yet, Garry persevered. Today, Garry is retired and living the good life. He is happy to be where he is with healthy kids. He has 2 daughters and 1 grandson named Jack. He lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, but still returns to Duluth. And this year, 2026, it's the 50th anniversary. So there's a huge celebration there, as Garry was the very first winner of Grandma's Marathon. And there's a lot more to Gary's story. What makes him tick? Why did they name the race after him? He must be a pretty good guy. So let's hear from Garry. Hi, Garry. Hello. Thanks for being on today.
I'm glad to be with you.
Yeah. Where in the world are you today?
I am in Fort Collins, Colorado. Blue sky, nice warm weather.
Yeah. In Minnesota here, it's been close to 90 the last couple of days. It's, May 2026 and just unusually warm, but beautiful. We met last year at the expo at Grandma's Marathon 2025, where I was just starting my podcast, getting started, and Garry was gracious enough to donate $10. You're my first donor. So thanks for doing that, because this is a podcast with a purpose to raise money for medical research. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing. It's very important.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been an honor to meet amazing people like you. Tell me some of your statistics. You won the Minnesota state record for the fastest mile. Talk about how you got started.
Well, I grew up in Twig, Minnesota, and running was always a game. I'd race my mother to the mailbox or up to the neighbors when we would get milk. And it was something that felt good, and I enjoyed it. And before I got into organized running, I was experimenting. I think the way most people do, I'd see if I could maybe run a mile. And so then eventually got into junior high school and started running for the Proctor track team.
You won the Minnesota state record for the 1 mile in 1979, and you ran it in 4:05. But you said you thought it was easy and it wasn't a big deal. Yet you were in high school.
The truth of the matter is I've never dreamed of final results. In my experience, the race begins at halfway. So that gives you half of the race to figure out how you're feeling and possibly where your competitors are and what they're doing. And so I was lucky. I had tremendous coaches. I had tremendous teammates. They were always very supportive and helpful. And it was a progression. I went to state 4 years in a row. As a 9th grader, I got to find out what it's like to run with the big boys. And as a sophomore, there was a fellow that had set the state record just a week before. And I beat him by about 1/100th of a second to win the race. And then, you just, you're a junior and you run it again, and a senior, you run it again. And that's the way it goes.
So did running feel effortless for you?
No, it's not effortless, but but you train for it. You teach your body to perform under different situations, and what you really live for are the training days, the easy days when you're out running. and you have friends that you're running with, and you're talking, and you're enjoying the warm weather, and you come across a pond and you see ducks, and sometimes you see deer running across the road, and that's what really sets the stage for the competition, is to have a good heart and good friends and stay healthy.
Is that what got you hooked?
Oh gosh, well, we have a saying in Twig: "May the forest be with you," because there's a lot of forest, a lot of gravel roads, and the things that I've seen running on those roads is incredible. I loved running, and I could go any place I wanted, and it was safe, and very few cars. And I actually had a training partner one year. It was a dog that decided it wasn't just enough to run. He wanted to beat me to the mailbox every day. So whether we were going for a 4-mile run or going for a 15-mile run, he'd go in and out of the woods, come back out, and we always came down the same road to finish the run. And I tried as hard as I could to beat him, and he beat me every time that summer. Yeah, you couldn't ask for a better training partner.
Yeah, and you had said that your goal was to have a great college career. Did you follow your friends to college? How did you pick where you wanted to go?
Well, no, I was very naive about what college was. And no one in my family had gone to college. My mother had gone to a business school. She was a bookkeeper by training. But, when I was a freshman, came back from the state meet, and 2 coaches stood on each side of my locker as I was emptying it to end the summer. And they both said, "Gary, you've got to start running in the summer." I said, "Oh, Coach, I fish in the summertime."
Yeah.
I said,
yeah.
"No, you don't understand. You have a chance to win a college scholarship."
Oh.
And I had to ask, "What's a scholarship?" I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
And so they told me, "Well, they'll pay for your books, they'll pay for your room and board." I said, "Well, I've got free books now and I have free room and board." Then they gave me the kicker. They said, "They'll even pay for you to do your laundry." And I said,
"Wow,
really? They'll do that?" And then I got on board. It was an interesting ride because I had enough of a career for 3 years that I got a lot of contacts from coaches around the country. And I visited 4 schools. I looked in Texas, I looked in Wisconsin, I looked in Iowa, and Roy Griak came to our house. And what he told me iced what made me decide to go to the University of Minnesota. He talked to my mother. And he said, "Miss Bjorklund, if your son decides to come to the University of Minnesota, there are certain things I can promise." He said, "Number one, if he comes, I promise he'll be in company with some of the finest young men in the state. And number two, if he comes, he will have opportunities to run all over the United States against the very best runners in the United States. And number three, most important, if he comes to the University of Minnesota and he applies himself academically, he will earn a world-class education."
Yeah.
That was it. I took a look at my mother. I could tell her eyes that it was a done deal. And so I went to the university because of Roy Griak. Roy had grown up in Morgan Park, a part of Duluth. And so we just had that northern Minnesota understanding of one another. He's just a wonderful man, great teacher, never a hard word from him. And it was a great experience to be able to spend time with him.
That must have been quite the switch from having never heard of what a scholarship was, never considering really going to college, that you could make something of it.
Well, all of my classmates pretty much went to University UMD in Duluth.
Yeah.
And that school was 3,500 students at the time. And University of Minnesota was 45,000 students.
Yeah.
And so the day that I went to campus, they gave me a new name. I was student number 792689. And everything we did for registering for classes, et cetera, that's who you were. So it was a real awakening. But the thing that Coach said about those young men that I was going to be working with, my roommate was a year older. And I'll tell you what, Gene Daly, I can't tell you how much I love him as a friend.
What was his name again?
Eugene Daly. He was from St. Cloud, Minnesota. And that first year, We were roommates. Well, for 3 years we were roommates, but that first year we were on a team that won the Big Ten championship in cross country, and we had the lowest score. I think it was the lowest score ever recorded in the conference. And Gene was, I'll tell you what, he was my big brother. He was organized. He had things scheduled. So on Tuesday night, we'd do this. On Thursday night, we'd do laundry, and we'd eat breakfast and supper together and go to the library together. And I mean, he was just an incredible big brother. And that made my transition to university a whole lot easier because he literally introduced me to people and departments and buildings. And so I had a big brother that really took care of me.
So he acted like a mentor for you to just kind of show you the ropes about how to be successful in college.
And, he's that kind of guy. And we've been friends forever. He lives in Tennessee now, but we still stay in touch. We had many, many good runners. Matter of fact, the first day that I met the team, Coach introduced me to the team and then had the team introduce themselves to me. Well, it was apparent to me that there was no school in America that I could go to. So many guys on that team had beaten me in my high school career that I had no reason to be cocky. And I mean, they were just good guys, good runners, very talented, competitive. And, we had a great fall, a wonderful experience.
You said there was no reason to be cocky. So it sounds like you ate a little bit of humble pie there, but yet it sounds like you did have a tremendous natural talent for running fast.
When you're healthy and the weather's good, my coaches at Proctor always used to say it takes three things to be an accomplished runner. First of all, the weather. If the weather's not good, that day may not be so good. The second thing was the competition. A lot of times in Proctor, I ran races that the competition wasn't at state level or a national level. And so let me just get that last little bit from my high school coaches. So the weather, the competition, and the course. Mm-hmm. And this applies to running today, whether you're a track runner or whether you're a cross-country runner or whether you're a road runner. The weather, the competition, and the course. In those days, there was only one rubber track in Minnesota, and that's where the state meet would be run. At Proctor, we didn't really have a track. We had an oval made out of railroad cinders. It was a great training track. It wasn't much for racing. And most of the track in northern Minnesota, they weren't great facilities either. In fact, one time we went to Silver Bay, it snowed.
Oh, wow.
We couldn't get to their track. And so the coaches plowed a circle around the parking lot, and we would warm up in the basketball gymnasium and strip down, go out and run what they said was 200 meters or 400 meters or a mile. I mean, one of the craziest track meets I've ever been in. And some of those guys from Silver Bay are still good friends to this day. And we laugh about that. You take the good with the bad. And that was one of the best things. Just wonderful. And so at Proctor, you learn to go with the flow. In the spring, we would start the season and we'd go out. We'd do our training in a gymnasium. And then kind of a capstone for that, coaches would take us out, still dead of winter. We'd run a 1.2 mile loop on the roads and then run like crazy to get back inside the building because it was warm there. And, when you think about it, you don't need the best facilities. You don't need optimal conditions. You just need opportunity. And you learn from the hills, you learn from the grass surfaces, you just learn to be one with your running. And that's why I love it. I don't mean to sound poetic or anything, but running it's different than contact sports.
Yes.
And it's there for everyone. Young, old, man, woman, makes no difference. We can all feel those sensations that you get from running distance, whether it's in the city, the country. It's no different in Brazil or China or Russia. That's one of the things I've learned from running is that runners are runners and we're a good family.
Yeah, that's part of the basic human condition that everyone can relate to.
Well, yeah, and early on, my coaches told me that we'll have competitive experiences, but the people you run against aren't your enemies, they're your friends. And I took that to heart. And so some of the guys that I ran against in high school, we're still friends. The guys that I ran with in college, we're great friends. The people I raced against in the NCAA. We're friends. Steve Prefontaine's a great example. We went 1-2 a couple of times, and as soon as the race was done, Pre would come over and give me a big hug, and I'd hug him back. And when I went international, the same thing. You treat your fellow competitors with respect, and whether they're from Japan or East Germany or wherever it is, runners are runners. And there's no reason that you can't be friends.
I find that running is the sport, it really only depends on yourself. You're solely responsible for your training and your speed, and the other people that you're competing with, you can use that to push yourself faster.
Well, I might have to take issue with that a little bit. One time there was, I got a plaque, and I can't remember. There was an article in the Minneapolis Tribune, and then I can't even remember who gave me this plaque, but it was titled Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, because there was a book out about that time too. And yeah, there are a lot of times that we go out and run alone. There are many, many more times that you go out and you run with people. Sometimes they're better athletes than you are. Sometimes they're the same as you. Sometimes they're people who are just learning to get into running. When I lived in Minneapolis, I would get requests from people who might be in their 40s or 50s. One of my best friends was a woman who lived down the street from me. Every morning, my roommate and I would be going out for a morning run, and she'd be coming back. We'd meet at this hill. She was coming down the hill, and we were going up the hill. Of course, we'd wave and say hello. And you came to learn that she'd never run. We had running stores at that, and she came into the stores, and she said, "Oh, you work here?" I said, "Yeah, I work here." She says, "Well, what can you tell me about running?" And find out, here she is, a woman. She's probably in her mid-30s. She's married. She's got 2 children. And I met her every morning because whether she was running a short run or a long run, she would leave early enough that she would get home in time to make breakfast for her husband and kids. And still, she wanted to run a marathon. And so knowing her by name, she lived in the neighborhood. And so I got to know her family really well. I got to know her well. And she ran her first marathon. It wasn't fast, but by golly, she did it. There's no way you could be anything but proud for her. And that's the way I feel about running. I know a lot of people that aren't star runners. But, for example, there was a runner at Minnesota. There are several runners at Minnesota that were not scholarship athletes. They were what they call walk-on runners. And there was a fellow, we call him Otto. His name is Ottoson, but called him Otto. And Otto never got to go on road trips. He could wear the uniform for home meets. And we were running indoors one day, and I had run my race and won it, and I was standing against the wall and watching, some of the running. And it was a 2-mile, and I saw Otto going around, and there was Coach Griak on the other side of the track. Every time Otto came around, Roy was jumping up and down, and he was just, "Go, Otto, go, Otto." And I thought, well, I haven't seen that before. And every time Otto went around, he and Coach were communicating with one another. And I thought, Coach's never done that for me. And Otto was running a great race. And every lap, you could just feel the energy getting better and better and better. And finally, it came to the final lap, and we were cheering for him. He's our teammate, and he got around the track to the finish. Coach Griak grabbed him and did a dance with him. And, I've always told Otto, from that day on, he was my hero. It's just incredible. And that's what running is. It's not a me alone situation. It's, you learn from other people, and sometimes those lessons are not so pleasant. Sometimes they're life-changing. And that day was a life changer for me. I'll tell you, it was something special.
So it sounds like you've carried forward this mentorship with other people too. You've learned that.
Well, absolutely. Well, keep in mind, I grew up in Twig, and everybody knew everybody. So and I loved the woods. I loved going out in the woods, and particularly in the spring when the ducks were coming back, and there are these little ponds way out in the forest, and you know where the ducks are going to be, but you go out just to see if you can find them. So if I was cutting across someone's field, they weren't going to say, "Hey, boy, get off my property." It didn't work like that. The neighbors were neighbors. We bought milk from our neighbors. We bought butter from a neighbor. When it was haying season, we would help them with haying. We always had a garden, and a farmer would come and help my mom prepare the garden for the summer and plow it up for us. And I think I told you the story about the lumber yard in town. My dad was a handyman. And so he's always going to the hardware store, the lumber yard. And when I would go with him, he would tell me, wait in the store until he and the owner of the business had completed their business. So I'd be sitting, and then the owner's wife would come into the store, and she'd see me there all alone, and she'd say, come on. She'd wave her finger at me, and she'd take me over to the candy display. It was a six-sided glass thing, and she'd open the door, and she'd say, take whatever you want.
Wow.
And so I'd have a candy, and I'd go back and wait, and she and I would talk until my dad came in. That's the way I was raised. That's the way Twig was. And so people that I've been privileged to know over the years, well, what a gift. Just a tremendous gift. And so, I've always, my mother was always a very sociable lady. Well, she was the postmaster where we lived, and people would come in just to talk to her and tell her the latest joke, and she would laugh. And so I had a good mentor in my mother and the people that lived in the area where I grew up.
Yeah, you said your dad was in World War II and his family had lived through the Depression, and that stuff influences you.
Well, it does. And my dad he was a difficult man. He had a problem with alcohol. He, of course, grew up in a time when men were men and women were to follow, and so he had some characteristics that were not maybe the best environment for growing kids. But there were people in the neighborhood that would, for example, my best friend, my first best friend was a kid from Finland. And he and I went to kindergarten together, and his family didn't speak English. And so I would go over, and I was just one of the boys. They treated me well. And then they went back to Finland. But my next friend, Scott Hansen, the most talented guy I've ever met. He's an artist. He's smart. He had a business. He would restore these antique cars. And I just loved to go down to his house because there's just so much to learn from. Well, his mom and dad treated me so well. They'd say, well, why don't you stay for supper today? And I remember one time we were going to camp out in the yard, and they had these hammocks, jungle hammocks that you could sleep in. And so Scott was in one, I was in the other. And I was about 8 years old or so, and I was scared to death. And really panicked almost. And then all of a sudden, I heard a voice. It was Scott's dad. He said, Garry, you okay? And I said, yes, I'm okay. And it was one of the kindest things I've ever experienced. And that's the way people treated kids where I grew up. It was a small town, and it was a tiny little grade school that we went to. Our classes were 12 or 13 kids, and our class was 3 girls and 10 boys. And so, you would be in one class for 2 years, and then you'd move up to another room that you would go to for 2 years, and another year for another class for 2 years. So, you knew everybody. It was the Halloween carnival, and it was a place that, we were really connected, even though, gosh, we might live 20 miles apart in the country. That little tiny school, we were a family. So I'm thankful for all of those experiences.
Yeah, and all those people influence your life, and it sounds like they were very helpful and supportive when they could be.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, a funny thing happened my senior year when I ran that mile in Minneapolis. Twig decided to have a little party for me.
Oh, they did?
At the fire department. And it was Earl Hansen. He's one of the leaders of the community, whether it was the fire department or, the county. But he said, Garry, I've watched you run, and I've seen the shoes you've run in, and decided you could really use something better. And he brought out a pair of leather work boots that he had sprayed gold, and he attached duck wings to it. And he said, now these shoes, you should really be able to run fast.
Yeah.
It was such a funny thing. I kept my high school track shoes that I ran in. I wish I would have kept those shoes too, but that's the way I was raised.
Do you have a picture of them?
No, I didn't. You have to remember, they didn't even have Polaroid cameras yet, I don't think. It was just the old, and so someone may have taken a picture of it. I didn't have a camera and didn't think of it, but it's burned in my memory. I guarantee you.
Maybe there's an artist out there somewhere who can draw a picture for you.
Well, I'm sure there is. I should talk to Scott. I think he could do it for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scott still lives in the area. I saw him at our 50-year high school reunion. I need to go visit him. We just don't get together at all because I live so far away. But he and I were like brothers. We did everything together.
Yeah. And you said even though you moved to Fort Collins, Minnesota, it's still your hometown, and you are coming back this year for Grandma's. What's in store for that?
Oh my gosh. How can it be 50 years?
I don't know. How the heck did you end up there?
Yeah. I like going back to Grandma's. And I got to tell you a funny story. But one of the first years that we went back, I wasn't running, but we went back, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law came over. And my father-in-law, just a wonderful man, and he was so kind to me. And we were looking in a store at some stuff, and we went to the counter to buy, I don't know if it was a shirt or what it was, but I think he was proud of me. But he said to the clerk, he said, "Do you know who this is?" And the clerk looked at me and he said, "No." And he said, "Well, he's here for the race." And the clerk, "What race?" Grandma's was not the event that it is today. And what's nice is I'm free to walk around and meet people, and I enjoy that. And if for some reason they ask what my name is, I'll tell them. Otherwise, I'm just happy to be a stranger talking to them. But one year, my wife and I ran the half marathon, and she was not a runner, but she said, "We got to do this." And I hadn't run for several years, but I knew I'd get 13 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, it was the greatest experience. We ran together the whole way, and she had to make potty stops, and I would make stops. There were people I knew and went to high school with and such, and I'd go over and talk to them and meet their grandkids, and we didn't care how fast or slow we were going. We knew we were going to get to the finish line. So anyway, we finished the race, and I was just on cloud nine. I was so full of beans, and we went down the line to get a shirt because after the race, you'd go and you'd get a shirt. And there was a couple in front of us, and their husband and wife, and they had run the race just like Rhonda and I had. And they must have run a lot faster than we did. I think they were maybe more tired than we were, but wife was kind of complaining about how slow the line was. And I looked at Rhonda, and she gave me a look. She knew there was something bubbling in my head. And so I tapped the man's shoulder, and I said, the line is slow, but you're going to get a great shirt.
Yeah.
And so he gave me a stern look. And then I looked at Rhonda, and, I knew I'd jumped into the mud puddle with that one. But tapped the guy on the shoulder, and I said, "Look, I'm just busting on you. I'm Garry Bjorklund." And he turned around, he looked at me, and he said, "I'll have you know, I know Garry Bjorklund, and you're not him."
Oh, really?
And it just happened. And I mean no disrespect to him. It is absolutely the funniest thing that has ever happened in my life. Well, I saw Kevin Pates, the reporter, that afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to tell that story. I mean, what a great experience. And he wrote an article about it in the paper. And it was several weeks later, I received a 3-page letter from this man apologizing. He said, "Well, we ran in high school at the same time, and you've changed."
Yeah, I was going to ask if he gave you his name.
Well, he was so apologetic. And I said, there's no reason to be apologetic. We're runners. You ran the race. I ran the race. I was sky high. I'd be able to run with my wife. I was just full of beans, and I apologize. And I've seen him since, and he and his wife come up, and we talk, and we're good friends. And I tell the story because if you want bad things to happen, they'll happen. But if you want good things to happen, they're everywhere. And a place like Grandma's, the examples, the people coming through the finish line, particularly the people that are maybe the second half of the runners. Oh gosh, it's so incredible to watch them and feel their emotions as they come through. Sometimes there'll be a group of 4 women and they all have the same shirt, and you know that they've been planning this forever. Sometimes you'll see somebody come through, much, much too heavy to run 13 miles, but he's run 13 miles, and by golly, he got it done. And if you give him a high five, let him know that he did something great, you can just see in his eyes that, it's just an extra little something. And I think I told you a story about last year when I was there. I met these ladies, two sisters and their mother. They were pushing their mother for 13 miles in not a regular wheelchair. It was really a neat looking wheelchair, and they'd never done this before. And it was something their mother wanted to do. She wanted to be part of Grandma's marathon, and so the daughters agreed to push her through. And I was talking to them because the race hadn't started yet. And I said, well, I'll see you at the finish. And they certainly weren't the first people coming in, but I'll tell you what, when they came across the line, I was over there and we were high-fiving, and the mother was just a smile from ear to ear. And
yeah,
that's what it's about. I've felt that euphoria many, many times, but I never get tired of seeing it in other people. And so I talk to parents. I tell them, usually there's a little talk before, and I'll say, you're running the race, and you're thinking about, what you have to do to run the race. I said, but slow down a little bit and pay attention when you come through the finish line, because if you've got children, make sure that you know where they are and you say hello. And when you get your medal, you take that back to your son or daughter, and you are the most important person in the world. And I love to watch the kids. They just, Dad, Mom, it's more than a foot race. That's all I can say.
Yeah, everyone is so proud when their friend finishes, when their friend or family. It's a huge accomplishment. And, I started this podcast last year, profiling ordinary people who do extraordinary things, because I am a marathoner myself. I'm one of the slow ones. I'm back of the pack, but I've completed 182 now, which amazes myself. I can't believe I did that. But the little booth I have says, I'm unstoppable because, and people stopped and they really thought about it. Like it was so personal to them. They filled out this little Post-it note and put their reason why they were running. And some people was, I run for my sister. Running makes me my best self, because I had a liver transplant, because I was falsely accused of something and had to get myself out of jail. I mean, just these amazing things that is this part of this resilience or getting yourself back going again and gaining confidence. And
well, hopefully that's what it does for you. Oftentimes you'll see people coming in to the finish line and they are in trouble. It could be a hot day and they're struggling. Mm-hmm. And you see one or two runners slow down, each grab an arm of that person and make sure that they get through the finish line okay. And if the person needs attention, a wheelchair or whatever it is, they make sure that the officials on the side know that there's a runner that needs attention. And you don't see that in football games.
I thought of you today when I was out and about running some errands, and there was two women getting into a car, and the one woman, she was injured her arm or something, was obviously having a hard time getting into the car, and traffic around them was honking in the parking lot. And so I went over and I helped them, and I flagged the traffic through and helped the woman get in the car. Just like you said, these small acts of kindness, just one extra person out there helping them ease the situation immensely for the other impatient drivers and for them.
Yes. And I saw something on the internet a long time ago about little acts that matter. And one was, are you a person who pushes the cart back to the grocery store after you groceries in the car? And I laugh about that because, doggone it, I have to confess I'm one of those people. And if I have to pick up 2 or 3 carts on the way in, I'll do it. And the reason I do it is because the kids that come out and drag those carts, and they do it whether it's 100 degrees outside or it's 50 below zero outside. And it costs me nothing.
Yes.
But sometimes, those guys are just coming out and they see, oh, hey, I'll take those from you. I say, thank you. That's the way I was raised. And I don't expect it from anyone else. But boy, when my daughters or my grandson show that kind of behavior of kindness, it makes me so proud. So absolutely proud.
Yeah, you mentioned you were kind of incognito. Your high school friend didn't recognize you, and yet you're on these T-shirts. That is one aspect of a legacy. But what do you think really matters to you as a legacy? What do you really want people to know? I mean, obviously you're a nice guy. That's why they honor you with that. But it's more than that. How do you really want to be remembered beyond that?
Well, where I grew up in Twig, I didn't ever see another runner. I had to go into Duluth to find somebody to run with. And even then, I may not have anybody to run with. But I dreamed about having people to run with. And it wasn't just me. It was other runners. When I think I was a sophomore in high school, I joined this club called the North Shore Striders. And it was just 4 or 5 guys from Duluth that were distance runners, and they like to talk about running. And we would talk about what's incredible and things like that. And I had so many recollections of conversations that we had. One, for example, was there was a legend in the Duluth area. There was a guy, nobody could tell you who it was, because it had to be some maniac. He ran from Barbers to Duluth.
Oh, uh-huh.
We're incredulous. We're looking across the table at one another saying, who could run 26 miles for crying out loud? And we were all track guys. And so the North Shore Striders started hosting road races. And, Duluth was, the North Shore Striders had just started. It was just guys. And the Twin Cities Track Club was they were the big timers in the state. And somehow or other, our leader in the club was able to get a road race in Duluth. And we invited the Twin Cities Track Club. We challenged them. It wasn't really an invitation. It was a challenge. And we didn't have enough people to make a team. And so what we did is we started going around the area. We'd go up to Silver Bay or Two Harbors. We'd go up to the range. Mm-hmm. And we started talking up. We need somebody to join us in this race. And we finally got enough people to have 5 runners in the race. And wouldn't you know, we beat the Twin Cities Track Club. Oh, yeah. My gosh. Oh, running in Duluth from nothing. It was a national championship, by the way.
Wow. And
the national champion from Arizona, the previous year's national champion came and ran, and he didn't win the race. And I mean, it was, I don't think there's a drug that could have gotten us any higher than what we were. It just, the energy was just incredible. And so North Shore Striders still exists to this day. And we're going to have a reunion. And there'll be people coming back that were there from day one and people that, are runners now. And we all get North Shore Strider shirts.
Okay.
I've got a couple that Scott has given me over the years, and I wear it, and I'm proud of it.
Mm-hmm. So Scott Keenan was the one who's the first race director for Grandma's Marathon. I'm going to talk to him also for the podcast. I'm very excited about that. He speaks very highly of you.
Oh, I must owe him money or something. I don't know. But no, Scott wasn't a runner at all. He didn't run in high school, and he went into the Air Force. And in basic training, doing some running, he kind of liked it. Well, what a blessing that he found an interest in running, because he's given so much back to running, not just Duluth, Minnesota, and quite honestly, all over the world. He's traveled many, many, many countries talking about organizing races and talking about grandmas and this and that. And I mean, he has had just this incredible influence and contribution to running. And, grandmas is unique. There are bigger races, New York and Boston and London, but there's nothing like grandmas. It's a foot race, but it's also a festival. And people come back to watch their siblings and cousins run, and people that never ran. I mean, there are women and men in their 80s that have run this race multiple times. And a classmate of mine, I didn't know she was a runner. I bumped into her. I didn't even recognize her when she came to the finish line, but she recognized. She came over and says, "Gary, it's Lori, how are you doing?" And I said, "Lori, you ran?" And she said, "Yeah, I've run every one of these."
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Well, she's become one of my best buddies since then. And Grandma has always been kind to me in that I love to promote the event. And sometimes I'll find somebody from out of state who wants to run, but they didn't get in. And Buzz has always been so generous to help me get them in. And I tell these people from out of state, now, when you go to Grandma's, you can't have just your shirt. You got to go buy a couple more. And when you go back, you got to brag to your friends that, oh, this is a great race, and see if you can't get 2 or 3 of them to join you the next year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Lori's one of my buddies. She found somebody in Boston that wanted to come to Grandma's, and by golly, she's coming. And so, that's what it's all about. And I look for Lori every year. She runs it, and she's my hero.
Oh, yeah. Scott Keenan gives you essentially all the credit for making Grandma's a legitimate competitive race that it is today.
No, that's not true. No.
Okay.
The first time I ran it, I had never run a marathon.
Right.
I hadn't trained for a marathon. I didn't know what a marathon was. And I'd never had racing shoes for running on the road. I mean, I was about as green could be. And anyway, he called and made the offer, and I told him, okay, I'll come up. After all, there was a legend.
Yeah.
And so if nothing else, we had to find out if it was humanly possible for someone to run that far. But no, I love the idea of Grandma's, and Scott and I talked a lot, and he had ideas of this and that and the other. My contribution was that I had the privilege to race many places other than Minnesota. And I think I told you this before, but over the years, talking to reporters has not always been my favorite thing to do, because some of them are so good, but some of them are so uninterested in running.
Uh-huh.
And that's hard. And so anyway, I've got to juice up the interview some way or another.
Yeah.
And so I might be in Los Angeles, and a guy would talk to me, and he didn't really know anything about running, but I'd say, hey, let me tell you where I'm from. There's this race called Grandma's Marathon. And I tell him it's one of the best in the world. I said, you run along the shore of Lake Superior, and the wind is always at your back, and it's a downhill course, and you finish at the back door to a saloon. What could be better? And sure enough, he'd write about Grandma's Marathon. And I'd get that article sent back to Andy Borg and Mickey Palucci, because they were the money behind Grandma's, and they got a kick out of it. And then get an article from New York, or they'd get an article from Texas, or whatever. For me, it was just a good joke. But these are businessmen. They thought that was pretty cool.
Those are the guys who owned Grandma's Saloon at the time.
Yes, absolutely. They gave Scott the money to get it started, and it wasn't a whole lot. They made it possible. The first year, I think people were just standing in the finish line, or in the parking lot where the finish was. Mm-hmm. We finished in their parking lot, and the next year they had tents set up so that after the race, the runners could have a beer and have some entertainment. They did so much for Grandma's. They had influence in the city that Scott or I wouldn't have. And then Scott became a politician, and so he worked for years to make connections in the city of Duluth, and always trying to find ways that he could get support for Grandma's Marathon. When he ran for office, he knocked on every door in Duluth.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's Scott Keenan. He doesn't do anything halfway. He doesn't race into it, but the finished product is going to be something that has legs under it. Yeah, he's quite a character.
Yeah, he told me the first year's budget for Grandma's was like $650. And then I think it was for a couple years later, it expanded to $35,000. So, I mean, it grew pretty quickly. And then he essentially was seeing the economic impact, the tourism of bringing the race to Duluth. I mean, it is the biggest tourist weekend in Duluth. I mean, the whole place is packed. It's just great.
You know what? Good towns need that.
Yeah.
They need to have a festival that brings family back and makes you proud. in the early days of road racing, there would always be people complaining about, god dang race, I can't get here, I can't get there. Well, the grandma really doesn't interfere with anything. And you don't get the complaints anymore. There are people that know nothing about running, and they'll come down and they'll stand on Superior Street and they'll clap for the runners. And they have no interest in running whatsoever, but they want to see what this is all about. And, people along London Road, I guarantee you won't see this in New York or Boston. People on London Road come out and they set up showers. If it's a hot day, the runners run through a shower.
And that's about mile 17, 18, 19.
They don't have to do that, and they're paying the water bill. But, people want to be involved. And, it's not just a foot race. It's a celebration for the city.
Yeah, one of the families had set up a pancake station. You get pancakes and maple syrup along the course.
Yeah, it's just miraculous how that event has evolved. And I mean, the thousands of volunteers. One year, I came back to Grandma's, and they were going to give me a shirt to wear. And I said, I want a volunteer. And I said, a volunteer shirt? I said, absolutely. I want to go out and talk to volunteers, and I want to thank them. And I want people to know that they're very important to this event. And I'm proud of that shirt. I still have it. And, that's Grandma's. I think that the organizers respect the people who volunteer, and the volunteers respect the organizers and the runners. And, it's just a heck of an event. It really is.
Yeah. And you've been a terrific ambassador, now that you have so much perspective after being retired, your running career is long since over.
Oh, one of the things Scott told me was he would give me hats and shirts. So when I travel, and even if I was running, and even years after I stopped running, I would still wear the Grandma's gear because people would come up to me in an airport. And one day, a lady in Denver, this is how important I am. You need to understand. I was waiting, to board the plane with Rhonda, and a lady came up and she said, Grandma's Marathon, do you know anything about it? I said, I know a little bit. And she says, is it as good as they say? Yeah, it's a really good race. And she said, I just can't squeeze a marathon into my schedule. And I said, well, there's a half marathon. You can do that. It's a good race. She says, yeah, that's got some weird name that, it doesn't say Grandma. And if I go all the way to Duluth, I want a shirt that says Grandma's Marathon. And so Garry gets put in his place fairly often. And I do what I can for the event, but by no sense of the imagination have I made anywhere near the contributions that the people in Duluth have made. It's just fun to be a part of it.
Well, that's one of the reasons I want to find out, who is this Garry Bjorklund anyway, with his name all over these T-shirts. I want to pivot a little bit. You're an Olympian, and you faced many, many male competitors. I imagine that was maybe a little fearful. For me, it was. But you told me that you did something that you'd never done before that took a lot of courage, and that was to call a girl. I think you have a pretty cute love story. How did this come about?
Rhonda?
Uh-huh.
Well, there are two elements to that. Do you believe in karma?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, but I kind of do now. Anyway, I went to the Olympics, and I came home, and that winter where there was a Christmas party, and Patty McGrain was a student at the university, and she came into our store, and we had a community board, and she would come in every weekend with an article from Park Rapids, Minnesota about her young sister. And she, as if people in Minneapolis are just dying to read about what's happening in Park Rapids.
Yeah, Park Rapids is about, 3-4 hours north of the Twin Cities?
Yeah, it's way north. And
yeah, it's the start of the Mississippi River.
It is, yeah. And anyway, we hired her to come in. And in 76, there was this Christmas party. And of course, Patty was at it. And she invited her cousin. And I'd never met her cousin. I was too shy to even ask the girl out. And so anyway, I'm standing like shy guys do, I was on one end of the room, and gosh, there was this blonde girl across the way. She was pretty cute. And I think I got the nerve to talk with her, or if she came over and talked to me, I can't remember what it was, but talked to her about 2 or 3 minutes was all. And she went back to her side of the kitchen, and I kept peeking, taking little peeks at her. And so anyway, I found out at the end of the night that she was Patty's cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had no reason to be shy around Patty. She was one of us. She worked in the store, and so I called her up and I said, "Hey, can I get your cousin's telephone number?" And she said, "You want Rhonda's number?" And I could tell she was happy to hear that. But I had never in my life ever done that before. I'd never called a girl or young woman that I met and then followed up with a phone call and say, "Hey, could we go out?" And so I called Rhonda, and she said, "Well, I'm pretty busy." And she was in modeling school, and she was in a dance organization. And she says, "I don't have time to go out on a date, but why don't you come to see our dance recital?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was a modern dance thing. I said, "Yeah, I'll be there with bells on." That was our first date. She was a famous person, and I was at this dance recital, and there was a party afterwards, and she's introducing me to all of these dancers who were very committed to dancing and darn good at what they did. And we had a good time. So that night I asked her if I could call her again. She said, "Sure." And it happened. A sales rep I knew was having a party for his customers at a golf course, and it was to be cross-country skiing, which I'd never done in my life. But he was going to have food and stuff, and I thought, "Oh boy, who am I going to invite?" So I invited Rhonda to come, and she said, "Sure, I'll come." And there was a race category. Whoever won this one particular race would get a bottle of wine, I think it was. And I kept falling down. She won that race by a mile.
She beat you at a race.
Yeah, she rubbed it in. Anyway, the chemistry was there, and I'd never felt that ever before. I'd dated girls, but running was just more important, and there was something special. And a weird thing in the Olympics, my bib number was 911, and you say that bib forever because that's pretty important to you. Then I found out that Rhonda's birthday was 911. And so there's some karma there somewhere because I fell for her like I never felt for anyone before. And she had a great marriage. We've got wonderful girls. She's just an incredible wife. And so she and I have been through a lot of adventures together. And I still love her, even though she outleaned me at the finish line of Grandma's half marathon one. So.
You were already an Olympian at that point, yeah, and you had to work up this courage to call a girl. I mean, that is facing a different kind of vulnerability.
I was just too busy. Too busy. In college, I didn't have time to date. I mean, people who play football have, 10 games, I think. In cross country and track, you have to have a minimum of 7 competitions quarter. We were on a quarter system in those days.
Oh, okay.
And so in a 10-week quarter, we were on the road a minimum of 7 times.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe we had a competition at home, but we were probably on the road 5 times. And we were driving everywhere we were going. And, school and practice and studying, there just wasn't a whole lot of time. So, and then when I got into the shoe business, I worked 6 days a week all year because in those days I had never been invited. I had been invited to races in college where the college would pay my way to come out and run in their event that they had. But I'd never had a race director, a non-collegiate race director call and say, "Hey, we've got this road race. Would you come out for it?" And so when I got into the shoe business, all of a sudden I got a call from Boston, from Tommy Leonard. He's kind of was the running guru in Boston. And he was a runner. He knew everybody. Just a crazy guy. He said, "I want you to come to our Irish festival in a town in Massachusetts I've never heard of." He said, "I'll give you an airplane ticket and $300."
Whoa.
And I said, "What? $300?" I'd been sleeping on the floor of the store when I first got back from the Olympics. I couldn't afford an apartment. And so for a month or more, I slept in the store. I'd go over to the U of M athletic complex and get in the shower there and, get a breakfast somewhere. But so my lifestyle I was not a big timer, let's say. And then with the store, working every day, or then I started going on the road. I just didn't have time for dating. And not that I didn't like girls, I did. But and then a few times there were girls that asked me for a date. Boy, I got full of beans in that situation.
Yeah.
But with Rhonda, it was just different, commitment. And she put up with me for several years of running. I mean, there were things we couldn't do because I was on the road. But when I retired from running, I did it because of commitment to my family. And, the commitment I gave to running, I wanted to give to my wife and daughters. And we have good kids, kind of great kids. They were incredible growing up. And my daughter, Hannah, says, there was a candy store about 4 blocks from our house. And I would take her there to buy candy. But this one time she said, the neighbor girl and I want to go buy candy. Can we do that? And I said, yeah, you can do that. What she didn't know was I followed her.
Yeah.
She didn't see me. I was being a sneaky old dad. I followed down and, saw her going to the store and saw her come back again. She never knew. And years later, I told her that I'd done that. She said, "Really? You followed me to the store?" And I said, "Hannah, I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. You may not know, but you needed the opportunity to be on your own, but with some control." And so that's always the way it's been in our family. We did a lot of camping together, and we had a favorite campsite in Rocky Mountain National Park. And the first thing Hannah would do is she'd say, "Oh, Dad, there's some kids over there." And I'd say, "Hannah, go introduce yourself." And so she'd take her little sister and they'd walk over and meet these kids. I mean, they're from all over the country.
Yeah.
And within 10 minutes, they're over. We had this particular campsite because there were these smooth rocks behind us. And the kids could climb up and they could slide down. And an hour later, after the kids have been climbing and sliding and having fun, we sponsored the s'mores party. And the kids just had a great time. And they even got letters from kids from, out of state afterwards saying, "Oh, that was so much fun." So we tried to give our kids those kinds of experiences where it was controlled, but at the same time, we wanted them to be not so shy. And I was going to say, Hannah is not shy.
Those big national parks that America has are really international destinations. I mean, I've met people from all over the world in Utah and Moab and in Rocky Mountain and through Yellowstone. It's an easy way to meet people from other cultures. You just open your ears and you hear all these different languages right in your backyard.
Absolutely. That's what we told our kids, that not all of the people that would come over and have s'mores, sometimes they'd come have dinner with us. But they're from Germany, they're from France. I think we had some Italian people. Matter of fact, one time I had parked our car at a trailhead, and we came out at the same time as the husband and wife from Germany, and they had taken the bus, so they had to catch the bus all the way to the other side of the park, and got talking to them walking along and found out that they had a long wait for the bus. I said, "Well, we'll drive you home. We'll drive you to your car." And what they didn't know is I had promised Ella that she could sit on my lap and steer. So we got in the car, and Ella sat on my lap, and their eyes got really big. Like, what on earth? And so we just toddled along. Ella was driving the car. I had control, and we talked and got these people all the way to their car. And I'm sure that they probably carried that message back to back to Germany because Germans aren't that. They're great people when you get to know them, but you have to earn the right. And so they earned the right to know that Americans are crazy.
The days before car seats.
Yeah.
She's driving on your lap.
Yeah, she was old enough to go on this hike. And so she was maybe 4 or 5, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And it was time for her to have that experience. And she said, no, many times. But being up in the park and, not a lot of traffic and this and that, she says, Dad, I'd like to drive the car. So,
yeah.
You roll with the situation. And, I don't think we put anybody into danger, but Ella sure liked it. She still remembers that. So.
Oh, yeah. My grandkids finally slept in the tent for the first time in their uncle's backyard. And they made it all night. Well, with mom in the tent, they made it all night. They're 5 and 7. It's really cute.
And actually, Jack and I have that scheduled for this summer. We're going to sleep in the backyard, and we got all the gear. I don't know if we'll sleep in the backyard or we'll bring out a mattress pad and sleep on the deck. It's closer to the refrigerator if you're on the deck.
And the bathroom.
And a bathroom, yeah, exactly. And so he and I have slept in the tent inside the house in the basement. So it's time for us to go outdoors. And he's gone camping with his dad. So he knows a little bit about camping, but, to do it with Grandpa, that's kind of special.
That's special. Yeah, he said he's 6. Can't beat that Grandpa time.
No, absolutely not. And the one time I went camping with he and his dad, Matthew wanted to try fishing. And so Jack and I started climbing up the hills, and we were up Red Feather Lakes. It's about 40 miles from here, and wonderful rock outcroppings. They're not mountains, but, they're really neat to climb on. And that little stinker, he realized that he could go through cracks in the rocks that I couldn't. And so he was to the top of the hill before I could get anywhere near because I had to go around and around. We spent about 3 hours climbing in the rocks, and he didn't want to stop for a minute. I was so impressed. I was so gassed out. I didn't know if I could, walk to the car or not. But, that's the kind of thing it is. And it's just a miracle that God gave us such a wonderful grandson. I'm sure your grandchildren are equally great.
Yeah, I'm step grandma. So when I run grandma's marathon, I'm definitely a grandma. Just I'm the fun grandma. I'm the one who runs with them on the weekend.
Yeah, but your grandma, and they know you, they love you, they trust you. They love to eat candy with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've always liked kids. I did a lot of babysitting when I was young because I had older sisters that had, babysitting. Quite a few families that they babysat for. Well, when my sister Bonnie was 10 years older, Joy is 5 years older than me. When Joy was too old to babysit, she told the people to give me a call. And so, for several years, I was a babysitter, pretty busy.
So you got their business once they were not available.
Well, I expanded it too, but
you expanded it?
Of course. Some of the kids that she babysat got to be too old, so I had to go find some new people. And, there just weren't that many babysitters in our little area west of Twig at that time. So, people would call me, hey, can you watch the kids? And the deal was I got 25 cents an hour. With some of the people, I got 50 cents an hour. After the kids went to bed, I cleaned the house.
Oh, okay.
I had an extra little spin in there to make it worthwhile.
You gave them the bonus cleaning. Yeah.
Well, clean up the dishes and pick things up. I also had a customer that I worked for chickens.
Oh.
If I babysat their kids, she would butcher and roast a chicken for me.
Oh, great. Well, you can definitely clean my house for 50 cents.
That's what Rhonda told me. She'd give me 50 cents if I clean the house. So
yeah.
That's what I've been doing while she was gone. Life's so good. It's the things we experience. And I tell stories like that to my girls, and they know that you didn't do that. Yes, I did. So, but yeah.
Well, I suppose we should probably wrap it up. You've answered so many of my questions. What's, your inspiration? You have so many different people who helped you along the way and supported you, and you carry this forward. you share your mentorship and your friendship and your help to other people. It's very infectious. So thank you for doing that.
Well, it's what I was taught to do by many, many good people. And as an athlete, I don't have a display of medals and that kind of thing. But I have my little shelf that I built in the basement, and that's really important to me. I have a picture of my mother and I standing in front of the Olympic Village.
Oh, wow.
A picture of my four coaches. I invited them to I was inducted into Duluth Hall of Fame, and so I invited them to come. And so I have a picture of my high school coaches and Roy Griak, those four together. Then I have family heirlooms. I have my dad's camera. I have boxing gloves that were my little toy boxing gloves that were my uncle's. I've got my grandfather's razor, one of those old, straight razors. I've got a statue of a runner. The artist was an instructor. Oh, I'm trying to remember if it was at Yale or Princeton. I can't remember. But anyway, a very, very famous artist, and a race director gave that to me because I'd helped him recruit some people. And so I don't have a trophy, but I have a piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got canoes and some Indian things that are important to me. That's my little nook with stuff. My kids didn't know that I ran until a teacher in middle school asked Hannah what her dad's name was, because he saw the Bjorklund name. And he said, I know your dad. And not that we knew one another, but he had qualified to run in the marathon trials and such. And so anyway, he took her in the office and talked with her a bit. And she came home and she said, Dad, you never told me that you knew Steve Prefontaine.
Uh-huh.
I said, yeah, he was a buddy. So she wasn't impressed that I was a runner, but she was impressed to know that I knew Steve.
Yep, he's legendary also.
He is, and he should be. Yeah, I respond when I see things on Facebook about Prefontaine. I'll say, the man is a good person. He's better as a man, as a good person, than he was as a runner. And he's the best in the world as a runner. So, you better pay your respects to this guy because he earned it. But, that's the blessing of running, is you get to know people and the impact.
Yeah, I ran the Eugene Marathon a couple of years ago, and I drove around where the crash site was to see the memorial, and it's so impressive.
On my bucket list, I haven't been able to finish this. I've been to Eugene many times, but I'm going to go to Pre's hometown. That's where he's buried, and I think his sister was there, and so I think I'll leave a note for him on his gravestone. But we just haven't been able to figure out how to squeeze in a trip to Oregon.
Yeah, so I was going to ask what's on your bucket list. So thanks for answering that.
Yeah, that's one of them. In your life, I'm sure there are many places that you've been that I'd like to go back there one more time.
Yeah.
Or places that you've been many, many, many times, and you want to go back there too. So I go back to Duluth. I visit my grandparents, my mother. I have visited my dad's grave and his wife. She was Native American, and so boy, that was when she passed. She made me administrator or whatever. I forget what it was called.
Yeah, of her estate.
But she was very much. She went after Dad died. She went back to the reservation to live, and she was very much into the Fond du Lac reservation and goings on. And I thought, oh my God, I have to do something special for her because she was Catholic, but she was also Native. And I asked the cemetery. It was at the church in Twig. Asked for a favor. Could I put her in a? She was cremated. Could I put her in a container that could be buried in my dad's site? And they said, "Oh, you can do that. We'll do that for you." And so I made her urn. It was made with cedar wood, and it was just big enough to put her remains in. And then I made sure that I put in some tobacco in case in the afterlife she wanted to smoke to the four winds. And I put a little trinket in there for her. And then on her gravestone, I had the cross because she was Catholic. And then I had the turtle engraved, representative of that's the natives' belief of when life began.
Yeah, the origin story of the world with the turtle.
The turtle, yeah. And it's a great story. So I wanted to honor her. So when I go back, I try to go and Roy Griak's buried where a lot of my family's buried. So I can to see a lot of people with one stop.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate it. You making the rounds. You still have them on your mind, appreciating them.
We do a little trimming on the on the grave site too. The grass gets a little long, and we go to Park Rapids where Rhonda's mom and dad are buried, and the sites where their caskets are buried, the land sunk, and so we're building that back up so that it can be level and good grass. What more can you do for your loved ones?
Well, and we talked a lot about legacy, and that is one way of honoring their legacy.
Absolutely. They're great people in their own way. They weren't perfect people, but yeah, I never got to meet my grandparents. Three of my grandparents, they passed before I was born. But my maternal grandmother, oh my gosh, it was the greatest thing in the world to go visit her. She was a great baker, and so she would always have these goods, and she would make egg coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and most people don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a thing around here.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee, but I've heard of this. I know about the egg coffee.
See, that's in the same class as lutefisk out here.
Yeah.
People, lutefisk.
Lutefisk is cod and lye.
Well, actually, it's out here. It's cod that comes from Olson's in northeast Minnesota or northeast Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, they import it to Colorado.
You betcha, it's the best. And Sons of Norway. When the family would come out, they would bring some lutefisk with, because you can't get it here. But they'd also stop at Carl's in Holly, Minnesota, and bring lefse. Oh my gosh, it's the best.
So lefse is like a potato tortilla, and people wrap it up in cinnamon or ice cream or
better than a tortilla. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put anything you want on it. Yeah, some cinnamon, butter on a hot. Oh boy, yeah, you make me hungry here.
Yeah, I'm getting kind of hungry too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you should go have something to eat. And
I should. Yeah. Well, Garry, it's been amazing talking to you and hearing about your legacy and how you've influenced so many people in just a positive, wonderful way, making the world a better place everywhere you go along. So my two final questions for you is, one of them is, what's your purpose?
My purpose? Oh boy.
What do you think you were meant to do?
You know, my mother never punished me, never ever. And so I wasn't afraid to ask her questions. And when I was a baby, my arm was burned. So we spent a lot of time, she had to rub cocoa butter on my arm every night when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
But we had great rapport. And I didn't want to go out and do something crazy without asking her first. You know, too many times when you're a kid, you go out and you do it and then you pay the consequence.
Yeah.
I would ask, Mom, I want to do such and such. What do you think? And it was always we'd be sitting at a table with coffee, and she would bring the cup up to her lips and sip a little coffee, and kind of, you could tell she was thinking. She said, Garry, I prefer you don't, but I know you'll do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's been my mantra. There are a lot of times I get these crazy ideas to do stuff, but I think, okay, am I doing the right thing? And I try as best as I can do the right thing, whether it's pushing a cart or, helping somebody in a tiny way, saying hello. Every day I go out there and I think I want to do something, I have to ask my mom first and get that, well, I know you'll do the right thing. And that's what guides me.
My final question to you is, what makes you unstoppable?
Unstoppable. I wish that were true.
I know we're all stoppable in different ways, but
No, I've stopped and started many times. The thing about a good life is you may have to take a stop here and there, but you know what? Start again. Sometimes the solution to a problem is that, boy, that was easy. Sometimes it takes years. And I got this crazy notion when I was about 8 years old. about running in the Olympics
Oh.
because I saw a track program and there was a lady Olympian, and I didn't know anything about the Olympics, but I kind of was impressed by what she had to say. So anyway, I had this crazy notion, would it be neat to go to the Olympics? And I didn't tell anybody, of course. And it was on again, off again many times. As I told you, the doctors told me I'd never run again. When I went to the Olympics, I wrote the doctor a letter of thanks and said, I'm so happy you were wrong.
Yeah.
I'm writing you from the Olympics. And I think a lot of people think that either you do it or you don't. Well, if you're a person who is unstoppable, you have to do it many, many, many times before you get the first iteration. And if it's something you really love, well, you continue to refine it. But that's what makes life's journey so much better. I love it when runners tell me they've run 130 marathons. That's way beyond my comprehension. But then again, I've done some crazy things like going to the boundary waters without a tent. And
yeah, you get eaten alive by the bugs.
Yeah, I learned my lesson, and the next time I had a tent. I have to say, I try to be as optimistic as I can. And all of the people I love the most in this world are optimistic people. They have had unbelievable stories to tell about things that should have crushed them, but didn't.
Yes.
And so I envy those people, and I try to remember to bring that thought process to the top and go from there. And, as a woodworker, it might take me 5 years to finally finish a project because I start and stop. And, but finally it's done. And then I start another project. There should never be the greatest goal that you don't have to keep trying. The gift of life is that you keep trying. And if you have to stop, you stop. And then you figure out when to start again and you just keep on going. At least that's what I've tried to teach my children. And now I've got a grandson. I'm trying to teach him the same thing. That he's got a little bit of a problem. He's very smart. He loves to work with Legos, but he gets frustrated because he's working on Legos that are for a middle schooler, and he's a kid. And so I distract him. I take him away. And when we build racetracks, he loves to build racetracks. Every time we build a racetrack, I take it apart. And he says, Grandpa, don't do that. And I said, we have to put it together so that it's better next time. Oh, okay. I've got an idea. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a fool, but I've had a good life. And a lot of stops and a lot of starts. And I appreciate both.
Yeah, you've had a great life. Amazing. And I'm so glad that you're still sharing, still helping out.
Oh, it'd be terrible to not share.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it and learned a few things. Well, the people that we talked about today, they don't quit, and neither should you. Whether you're running marathons, rebuilding your life, or just searching for that next spark, you are more capable than you think. If this episode hits home, share it, subscribe, leave a review. Let's build this community together of relentless people who refuse to stop moving forward. And if you want to do something even bigger, support the mission. We're raising $1 million for medical research, and your support makes a difference. Check out our website at unstoppablestoriesthatmove.com. I'm Sally Hed Dahlquist. Until next time, keep running, keep pushing, and never stop proving to yourself what's possible.